We have some phenomenal speakers with us today. We've got Volusia County Schools, and Volusia has been recognized as one of IMS Global's Centers of Excellence for their commitment to achieving digital on day one, and we are thrilled that they are here today to share their intentional approach on doing so. Please be reminded that your audio is muted and will remain muted throughout our call today, but we want to make this as interactive as possible, and we would love to hear from you guys. So please use the Q&A feature inside of WebEx to ask your questions, reach out to us, and myself and Kara will address those throughout our time together today. Before we get to Volusia, I wanted to first introduce myself. I am Karen Daughtery, one of the K-12 institutional program managers with IMS Global. And along with me, we've got Kara Jenkins, who is our Director of Marketing Communications. Today's webinar is going to be focused on how IMS Global Standards can help you evolve your digital ecosystem. You know, here's the big picture, and we understand that inside of your institution or your district, you have a lot of different systems, and the difficulty that we go through to make sure that those systems work together. IMS Global as a whole has a vision of helping all make those systems work together to meet the district's needs. And as you'll hear from our speakers today who have started this journey, our goal and our vision is that you too will start to see your digital ecosystem evolve with the use of IMS Global Standards. One of the ways that we help K-12 institutions reach those goals and evolve their ecosystem is through our K-12 Digital Learning Revolution program. This program was built to meet districts where they are, whether they were just finding out about IMS and coming in, making the commitment to buy certified products, or making the commitment to start having those conversations with their vendors, as Volusia is going to share with us today. Or maybe it is their goal of implementing OneRoster and moving those vendors towards certification, or maybe even something a little bit more advanced, such as using analytics and data analysis, or maybe badges. This program meets our districts where they are, and it allows for significant revolutionary advancements in teaching and learning. Today, the webinar, we're going to focus on OneRoster and how Volusia has really focused in on this foundational level of this program to make a difference with their, in their district, with their vendors, and then make that impact on learning. Just to give a little bit of background, if there's anybody on the call who is questioning, maybe I've heard about this OneRoster, what is it? Maybe a high-level overview of OneRoster. This is an easy-to-use data exchange between your student information system and all of those digital tools that are being used in the district, in order that all of those tools can be streamlined. We want to streamline the rostering, the course setup, the grade reporting, and we strongly believe that OneRoster should be a major element in every school district's digital day one strategy. With the use of OneRoster in place in your district, this allows for teachers to get right to the important task, and that is using those digital tools to improve learning outcomes. And so with that, I want to turn it over to Volusia County, and we are super excited that they are here, and they are going to share their intentional approach on moving their vendors into the use of OneRoster.
Thank you, Jill. Hi, everyone. Jamie and I are excited to be here today, and we appreciate you joining us on your Wednesday afternoon. We want to take we want to thank IMS Global for Volusia's recognition of being a center of excellence for our OneRoster implementation. It's been a group effort on several parties that we'll mention in our presentation. And we wanted to take this opportunity today to share our journey in our initiative with OneRoster that took place over the past several years. My name is Nicole Duchesneau, and I am the Digital Learning and Assessment Specialist for Volusia County Schools. Previously, I have background as an elementary classroom teacher, so I have experience of being the end user for a lot of our applications that we have in Volusia and the elementary role.
My name is Jamie Stalker. I am an educational assessment and data analyst in Volusia County. Previously, I was a secondary math teacher at our online school. And then after that, I was an information systems analyst at the online school as well. So I've had experience with, the end user as end user and now in the back end.
We feel that our experience as an end user has definitely helped us in our role that we are in currently, because we can relate to the situations and issues that the teachers are faced with in the classroom.
So we wanted to give you a little bit of information, background information about Volusia County Schools. Currently we have over 67,000 student enrollments, so we're a pretty large district. All of our adopted textbooks now have an online piece for student and teacher use, and our more recent adopted textbooks also come with a thin comma cartridge, which is another IMS standard. Now, 2 years ago, we had 3 vendors accepting our OneRoster files, and over the last 2 years, now we have 24 vendors accepting our files. Even though we had quite a big move in the more recent years, it did start a few years ago in those foundational conversations that we had with those vendors. Our tech support director, Mike, he started this conversation with the vendors before Nicole and I came into position. And with those conversations, we then pushed where he started off. And we're pretty happy with the results that we've gotten.
Yes. Mike also started the initiation with our IMS involvement. We are IMS members. I believe Mike is on one of the boards. And that definitely has helped, especially Jamie and I in our new role in this initiative with our OneRoster push with Volusia. So this is a picture of our digital ecosystem that one of our providers had created for us, and we just love this image because it kind of, encompasses all of our main players in our ecosystem. You'll see at the center of our ecosystem, you have IMS Global. That is, imperative. If you look, we have the standards going across, and so Jamie and I's focus is really to help with the OneRoster initiative. That was our goal in our new roles. Jamie and I both started in the 16-17 school year. We're going to talk about what we've learned in our path in our positions. But in this picture of the digital ecosystem, you'll see that also in the center we have Classlink. Classlink is our OneRoster host, and we're going to be talking about them and their role in our OneRoster. Can you go back one slide, Jamie, please?
I apologize.
It's okay. It's okay. No problem. And I apologize. Jamie and I work very closely together. However, right now, currently, we are doing this apart. I am over at the Focus Users Conference, which brings me to, we are adopting a new SIS this upcoming year. So this year, we're working on the migrations. So that is a huge part of our push for the OneRoster initiative that we've had in previous years. It's definitely going to help us with our transition. Also, you see we have Canvas as our learning management system and Safari Montage as our lore. And we are a Microsoft district. Those are some of our key players in our digital ecosystem. We wanted you just to have a background of what providers we're working with in Volusia. So Classlink. Classlink has been our partner, and we'll say partner, from day one. We've probably been with Classlink probably past 4 to 5 years that I know of. They have truly been a partner. We work with them very closely. You know, we shared with them our goals. We had a goal of going 100% OneRoster with all of our vendors. That was our goal, and we're slowly working towards that. So Classlink recognizes that goal. Classlink is also IMS. They're on the board. They have a lot. They're always at the IMS conferences, and they really helped us get to where we are in Volusia. We converted over 21 data loads to OneRoster within last year. So as you can imagine, that has a lot of phone calls in the background. We said, you know, Classlink, here's our providers we use in Volusia. We want to get them OneRoster. Where do we go from here? We set up meetings. Classlink would have meetings with their providers. Loop us in was what was discussed. They would, you know, tell us the status of each provider. They were a phone call away. Jamie and I were both new in our roles, and they definitely helped, you know, work with us to get where we are. Classlink is also here today at the Focus conference, which is our new SIS, and so they're definitely helping us in our transition into our new student information system with all of our vendors.
So why OneRoster? Some of the benefits that we quickly realized with the OneRoster standard. One, we have quite a few vendors accepting our OneRoster files right now. Some of them are conversions from last year, and some of them are new implementations. And when you have everyone following the same standard, it's very quickly to implement because at that point, they're just receiving something that's already built instead of you finding out what their file formats are needed and then you having to contact your IT department, see if they can run some code to build those files, which can be kind of a back and forth process. But if everyone knows from the get-go what's expected with the OneRoster standard, then the implementation is pretty quick. We, like Nicole said, we are changing our SIS this year. And with that, everything that was integrated before has to be rebuilt. So instead of rebuilding however many vendors are receiving roster information as a separate file load for each one, we're going to rebuild our OneRoster files. So that makes the transition a whole lot smoother for our district. It also makes troubleshooting a lot easier. I know our OneRoster files pretty well. I actually had a call earlier today, and they were asking me about different fields, metadata fields that we use, and I know them off the top of my head. And so it's really easy for me to troubleshoot when something needs troubleshooting because I know this file. However, if each vendor had a separate file format, I would have to look into a whole lot more, and it would be more time consuming to troubleshoot. Along with that is the file maintenance. Sometimes you do need to make some tweaks, but it's a lot simpler when it's just one format. And then there's the less jobs ran on a nightly basis. Again, instead of sending a separate file to each vendor, you have one job. We have one job that goes to Classlink, and then Classlink filters our files and sends it out.
Another benefit of having Classlink with our OneRoster host is we can set up thresholds so that each night when the files load that we don't have so many changes, and then when we come to work the next morning, it's total chaos. We set those thresholds. If our files exceed those thresholds, Classlink sends us an email. Jamie and I have the heads up. We can look in to see what the issue is and have less chaos and see if those changes were intentional, and if so, we can bypass those thresholds. So as I mentioned, Jamie and I started the 16-17 school year this summer, and so we came in at the tail end of a large conversion, And so I believe it was August, right, Jamie, like early August, that we could choose before school started. And we did a large conversion with one of our textbook providers. And Jamie and I, it was our first one. We were like, okay, let's see, we got this. And we quickly realized you can't make a change that big in a short amount of time. We definitely ran into several obstacles, access issues that took several weeks into the beginning of the school year. So that was a huge aha moment of, man, we really need to be intentional. What did we learn from this experience? How can we make it better? Because what we were doing was, only hurting our teachers. The students weren't into a lot of their applications. They didn't have access to one of their main textbooks. And for some of those students, getting in from day one is definitely important for them. So that was the time that Jamie and I said, okay, it can only get better from here. And so we had conversations, and we'll get into this in a minute, of how we can make it better for the following school year.
Nice. So then we started a deliberate approach. That's our conversion plan. Instead of happening over a short period of time, it actually spans over a few months, and I'm going to go over into that in a few, probably on the next slide. But with our approach, early in the fall, we started communicating to our vendors that were not accepting our files and telling them, hey, this is our intention this school year. We're going to send you more details coming up soon, but just so you know, this is what's coming. Okay. In January, we sent them an official email saying this is our expectation, this is our timeline, and we attached a timeline to it. We asked for if they had any specific needs for the OneRoster standard. Some vendors require the use of metadata fields. Hopefully not too many, because we tried to stick to the standard. Some fields are optional that some vendors require, so we asked for that information back in January so we can make the changes that we need early on. And then this part was key for us. It is imperative that you follow up with vendors. We would put reminders on our calendar saying, hey, if you haven't heard back yet from this vendor, we have to reach back out. Because essentially, if they're not meeting those deadlines, it's hurting us. So it was our responsibility to make sure that everyone was on the same page and that we were moving towards our goal. Okay?
Yeah, so can I just add in something, Jamie? Classlink, they knew our goal was to get as many vendors as possible. So sometimes there was conversations and calls that Jamie and I weren't able to be on. But Classlink was pretty, they were really good at sending us emails and updates. We would email and they said, this is where we are with this vendor. So Jamie and I could really keep track of each specific vendor because, as you know, 21 conversions in one school year is pretty crazy. So keeping up with each vendor, and then Jamie and I meeting up and saying, where are we with this? What's the latest? So that was pivotal into our success with it.
On our timeline, we had 3 main dates. By spring break, we asked that each vendor provide a sandbox where they can receive and upload our OneRoster files, and we can see how the data is coming through. Class names, we wanted to make sure they were readable. We wanted to make sure that it looked clean and easy for the end user. Okay. So after the sandbox and we get cleaned up what we felt like needed to be cleaned up there, we had a soft go live at the beginning of the summer. So what we meant by a soft go live is we were sending them our live data and it was in their live platform. But I call it soft because we did at the beginning of the summer. So it wasn't our entire district wasn't really using the products at the time. It was really our summer school students. With that smaller population using, if there were small bugs left, it was only affecting a smaller group of students instead of 67,000 students. And then our final go live, it was August when the school year started. By then, most of our bugs had been worked out. Actually, I'm pretty sure all of them. We had a really smooth start to our school year this year. Now, which was stark comparison from our first start being, I do attribute to the work that we put in along with our partner Classlink to being just really meticulous and careful with everything. And you do have to be a little bit flexible. We did set these as expectations. However, some vendors weren't capable of providing a sandbox. So we had to give them extra attention when we had the soft go live to make sure that things were corrected as soon as possible. We also had one vendor where we were using their product over the summer, and so we didn't feel comfortable making that switch, why we had people actively using it. We had a summer challenge with that product. So we actually made that conversion during the first week of school, and we communicated to our district months in advance that for that first week of school, there might be an interruption in connection. So that was something that was expected, and it was only with one vendor. So we did try to stick to this timeline, and we did hold our vendors to it, but we had to be flexible where it was appropriate.
Right, and we feel that the key to our success last year was backtracking and really having a focus on all of our conversions and additions of who we were moving on to OneRoster and starting those conversations in January and working with them. We also contribute IMS Global for our success into the standard. Obviously, without them, there would be no standard, but all of the resources that they provide for their members to help not only in the procurement process, but as well as OneRoster. Jamie and I, where do we start with OneRoster? We are able to go into the website, find, abundance of resources, the K-12 playbook, the digital on day one checklist for OneRoster was definitely something that we looked at, and we, went through that and said, where are we with this? What do we need to work on? Because of OneRoster being of importance in our district, we said we're working with the vendors we currently have to move to OneRoster. We might have had them for years, and they didn't know back then that was in our intent. So we were giving them time to work with us to get them on OneRoster. However, moving forward for new providers that we're working with, that is a requirement. We have, made strides in our OneRoster, and we don't want to backtrack and accept providers that do not take OneRoster files. Because not only do we realize it saves our employees at Volusia County Schools time to only creating that one set of file, their time can be better spent on other things to help with this. So definitely all of the resources that IMS provides. Jamie and I, like we mentioned, we're new in our role, so we quickly started joining the monthly calls that were provided by IMS. We had joined work groups. We started going to the quarterly conferences and really familiarized ourselves with all of the resources. We had a question here or there. We emailed Jill and Karen, and they were very quick to get back with us. And so definitely working very closely with IMS has helped. So Jamie and I, and we met with other departments in our district, technology services. We worked very closely with tech services as well as other departments, ESC, and we looked at our procurement and we said, what do we need to add in there? IMS gave us the verbiage to put in there. So moving forward, that is something we're definitely working on. We also have all of our resources that we use that we're going to be sharing with you in here.
So our next steps, like Nicole mentioned, we're going to continue to adopt OneRoster certified products. Actually, the ID department is building a new district-wide procurement process in which before a school does a separate purchase or a department does a purchase, we actually look at the software and we communicate with them to make sure that if they do require rostering, they accept OneRoster. Like Nicole said, we put a lot of work, and for good reason, a lot of work into moving our existing vendors to OneRoster. So we don't want to backtrack and start building custom loads again. This school year, we are focusing a lot on transitioning to our new SAS focus that is also taking careful planning. Like I said, we only have to rebuild is that one set of files for the OneRoster instead of building for each vendor. But with that, I want to be careful to make sure that we don't have too much of the format change so that things stay smooth for the next start of the school year when we are using the new SAS. Okay. And we also are going to continue to share the importance of OneRoster with everyone else. And we understand that without a large group of people pushing for the standard, companies aren't going to move. If only one district is saying this is our expectation, but nobody else is doing it, it's going to be harder to move a company to accept that standard. But if that's an expectation that's pretty widespread, then companies are going to move to what the large amount of their customers want. So we know the benefits of OneRoster. We know the time that it saved our district, the money it saved our district, how much easier it is to find errors and resolve them when we're troubleshooting. We need to understand the benefits of it, and so we just want to make sure other people understand the benefits as well, because with numbers comes strength. So.
Absolutely. And even, working with individual schools of the importance of OneRoster. When we explain to them, when you look at some of these providers you were looking to purchase and they don't take any type of automatic rostering, what does that mean for them? Jamie and I can't help them load their students. That's something that if they choose to purchase, that would be on them. So when you start to explain that to the teachers, the principals, of why the importance of us going only to OneRoster certified products, they understand the why behind it.
All right, so that is that's our presentation that we provided. Do you guys have any questions?
Yeah, we are open to questions, and we have all of our resources that we can share as well.
Great. Thank you very much, Jamie and Nicole. We did have one question so far, but I just want to remind the audience if you do have a question for the speakers today, please, you can submit them through the chat or the Q&A. But the first question we did get so far was if you could explain how rostering is handled at Volusia. Is it a central office or departmental? Like who owns it?
Okay.
So in Volusia, most of the rostering is handled with Nicole and I. There are, I believe one department was doing separate ones, but they're slowly giving the products over to us because they realize that it's easier to have it centralized. So if we're moving in that direction, even small school purchases are contacting us instead of trying to handle things on their own. So
definitely. I also wanted to mention that Jamie and I having conversations with other school districts at conferences definitely helped with us because we could talk to them and say, do you use these providers? Do you have them on your own roster? And we could really, work and partner together with a lot of the providers we had in common and, getting them to be OneRoster certified. So definitely the partnerships that you have among other districts that you meet at conferences was important as well.
Okay, Jamie and Nicole, could you explain how the files are secured when you're sharing them with the vendors?
So all of our OneRoster files are shared through Classlink. We deliver our files to Classlink through an SFTP. Classlink uploads our files to their product. Then Classlink will filter the files for us. We choose the filters, but they will filter our files. So the vendors will only receive the data that's applicable to them. Some products only apply to certain schools, some only apply to certain classes. So it's nice to have control over those filters. And then Classlink can send the files to the vendor. Either the files can grab the data with REST API, or they can send the files to the vendor's SFTP.
Yes, and another thing I want to mention that we found helpful with that is, you know, Jamie and I, we don't have all of our users at the school district on our OneRoster files. You know, we hadn't had a application that we needed all of our users. So now we're starting to get more on there. But in the meantime, when we adopted a new provider and we noticed that there was a group or a handful of people that were not on our OneRoster files, we do have the ability to manually add to our OneRoster files through Classlink to help with the access.
Okay, and another question, how does moving to a new student information system impact your vendors, if it does? Or is the impact only between the SIS and Classlink?
So this one question is kind of, we're planning to try to keep the format of the data fields as similar to what they are currently. So hopefully for our separate vendors, the data they receive is going to be in the same format. And what I mean is, for instance, right now our class SAS IDs start with the school number and then the course code. Then after that, there's the section number. So we have a certain format that we follow in our fields. And we want to try to mimic that when we move to the new SAS. So most of the legwork that we're going to be doing this year when moving to the SAS is moving with working with Classlink to make sure that everything is coming through to them cleanly and as similar to our current format as possible. So that way, when we do go live with them with the new SAS, the vendors aren't seeing a change. That's our plan, but of course, there's a few months between now and then, so we'll see how it goes.
There's a question, do you know how widespread the standard is or how many districts have adopted the OneRoster standard?
I don't know a number. I do know that in Central Florida, our surrounding districts, a lot of them are also pushing for the standard. I know Orange County, which is just a couple counties over, and it's actually pretty large, that they have a strong push for it as well. But I can't speak to the specifics of what each different county is doing.
Thank you, Jamie, for answering to that. And this is Karen. And we know that OneRoster standard is being used throughout. It's being used globally, as a matter of fact. And you are able to check the IMS website at imscert.org to find more information on vendors who are certified with that OneRoster specification. And we encourage everyone to utilize that wonderful tool, members and non-members alike. It's an open resource to go find out which vendor is using OneRoster and OneRoster is certified, so that both sides of your puzzle are fitting together nicely, and the push and pull of that data is integrated nicely into your digital ecosystem. So, you know, oftentimes we can look at numbers, but we look at numbers based on membership and certification. But IMS Global we've got open standards, so anybody is welcome to use them and you know, promote those to their customers. But you know, we want to strongly encourage those who are using it and who are using that standard with their tools to become certified, so that IMS can stand behind it. And as Jamie said, there's power in numbers where we can continue to push the ball forward and make new things happen.
And speaking to what she was just saying on the website where you can look up the vendors, that is, it's one of our first stops whenever someone's asking about purchasing, is we quickly jump over there, type them in the search field, and we can quickly see if they're certified and what standards they're certified for. I know I mentioned thin common cartridges earlier just for a moment because it's a different standard they're purchasing. But that's it's another thing that we look at when we're adopting different products. So it's easy to look and see, okay, do they accept OneRoster files? Can they provide us with a thin common cartridge? Like, we can see what they're compatible with and how they're going to work into our digital ecosystem.
Absolutely. And then again, it's great to have that partnership with IMS as well as Classlink because they see the importance of, the providers being OneRoster certified. So as a team, we really work closely with those providers. And if they're not OneRoster certified, getting them to be. And planning out a roadmap of by this timeline, you are going to be OneRoster certified. So we're all on the same page, and that definitely helps. So we work with them together.
Okay, we just had a little question about whether or not this webinar is being recorded, and yes, it is. And if you, everyone who signed up today will receive an email with a link to that recording after the session ends, within 24 hours of the session ending today. It will be made available.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kara, and thank you, Jamie and Nicole, for that wonderful presentation. Thank you for your openness and willingness to share your intentional approach on how you guys have made such great strides. That's an amazing number, going from 3 vendors who are accepting your OneRoster files. Now you're at 24 in such a short amount of time since you guys have been in your positions. That's just exciting information. And thank you for your willingness to share. And I'm going to just throw this out there. As I mentioned earlier on the call, Volusia has been recognized as one of IMS Global's K-12 Centers of Excellence. And part of themselves identifying themselves as a center of excellence is their willingness to share resources and information and strategies with others. So, I know that they are always happy and willing, and would love to hear from you guys who are on the call. So in closing, our last few minutes here together, I've got a few action items for those of us who are on the call today. We want you guys to have access to those IMS resources that have been mentioned throughout today's call. If you go to imsglobal.org/K12, you're going to find information on the K-12 program that we talked about, our end user groups that meet monthly that Volusia said that they've actively started participating in, as well as the playbook that they mentioned. And that playbook, just repeating what Jamie said, is this is such a valuable, easy to use reference full of resources for all K-12, for administration, digital curriculum teams, IT leaders, all who are looking to implement these all IMS Global standards, but specifically OneRoster. We encourage you guys to schedule a meeting with us, whether it's just, hey, I want to run some ideas by you, have some questions for you, or we're interested in learning more. We want to help your institution define a strategy, a plan, and a process for helping you guys migrate your digital ecosystem into that interoperable system that we know is possible with IMS standards. And then finally, we would love for everybody to get involved in creating the future of ed tech. In order for that digital ecosystem to continue evolving, we are constantly encouraging districts, state agencies, ed tech vendors to be involved in IMS so that together all of us can advance our community of leadership and continue moving forward with all things that are possible. So one way that you can definitely get involved, learn more, dive deeper into a lot of the topics that we've talked about today and all things IMS is to register for our leadership conference, which is Learning Impact Leadership Institute, and that takes place in May this year. And this year we're going to be out in San Diego, California. And at this annual leadership conference, we've got tracks that are focused specifically on K-12. And I know that Volusia is going to be there and presenting and sharing their story. And perhaps some of you on the call are also going to be there as presenters. But we want to encourage you guys to register today and join us in May out in San Diego. And with that, guys, I want to thank you again for your time, and thank you for being with us today. Look for more information on our K-12 website about our next webinar that's going to be next month. It's actually going to be on February 20th. And next month, be looking out for information. We're going to be talking about digital badges and have a great speaker lined up for us to share their story on how they've incorporated badging with students and in their digital ecosystem. With that, have a great day. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.